I know so many fighters that are living in the Jackson MMA gym because they can't afford to have their own apartment. And they're UFC fighters.
In a shocking turn of events, the entire UFC featherweight division appears to be in turmoil, and the organization never saw it coming. Reports are surfacing that multiple fighters are struggling just to make ends meet, with some even being forced to live inside the very gyms where they train. According to sources close to the situation, several fighters from renowned camps, including Jackson Wink MMA, have been living on gym mats because they simply can't afford apartments. These aren't up-and-coming amateurs. They're active UFC athletes competing at the highest level of the sport. This revelation raises serious questions about fighter pay and the sustainability of a career in mixed martial arts. As the situation unfolds, the UFC may be facing growing pressure to address the financial realities its athletes are dealing with behind the scenes. UFC President Dana White has once again found himself in the hot seat as conversations around fighter pay continue to dominate headlines. Critics, including current and former fighters, have accused the organization of underpaying athletes who put their bodies, and often their futures, on the line for the sport. When asked about the issue, White didn't hold back. "Nobody's forcing these guys to fight here," he said. "If you don't like what you're getting paid, there are plenty of other places to go." But guess what? Everyone still wants to fight in the UFC. Despite White's confident stance, many within the MMA community argue that the numbers tell a different story. While the promotion continues to post record-breaking profits and expand globally, a significant portion of the roster reportedly struggles to cover basic living expenses. Some fighters have even claimed they're living in gyms or taking on second jobs just to stay afloat between fights. As the debate intensifies, fans and fighters alike are demanding more transparency and fairness when it comes to fighter compensation. Whether the UFC chooses to address these growing concerns or maintain its current structure remains to be seen. But one thing is clear: the conversation around fighter pay isn't going away anytime.
Time somebody comes out and says, "Oh, you don't pay your fighters, you don't pay your fighters." I could come out and do this every fuck. I'm not. I don't give a shit. You don't like the way we pay our fighters? Too fucking bad. Go start another MMA organization. You go fucking figure out how to do it. And you can pay them $10 million a fight, $30 million a fight, whatever you want to do. We run a business. We've been very good at it. Not only do we run the business, we continue to grow the sport and take everybody along with us. Tonight, like Laura Sanko said, this whole contender series was all foreign guys that are coming in here to fight. Everybody makes money, everybody makes a living. There are some hard stories and some sad stories. Some guy came in at this. You're either fucking good enough to be here or you're not. This is the big league. It's like the NFL. You can either last here or you can't last here. But people get paid. People get paid a lot of money.
It's a moment that's bound to have major consequences across the MMA world, and the UFC never saw it coming. What began as whispers of discontent has erupted into a full-blown crisis. The salary strike nobody expected has officially begun. "We're done with it." Those were the words that reportedly detonated like a grenade in the middle of a UFC matchmaking meeting. The entire featherweight division, the same group responsible for some of the most electrifying fights in UFC history, has just quit. Not quietly. Not through leaks to the media. They quit outright. Nearly the entire roster of UFC featherweights has refused to fight. Fighters are pulling out of negotiations, declining scheduled bouts, and instructing their managers to freeze all activity with the promotion. The reason? A sudden and controversial pay cut introduced during contract restructuring. After years of loyalty and headlining performances, fighters were told they would now be valued differently. Corporate speak for one thing, they were about to be paid less. For athletes who already live near the poverty line, this wasn't just a disappointing business decision. It was a breaking point, and for the first time in UFC history, fighters are fighting back without throwing a single punch. This isn't a minor dispute or a quiet protest. This is a full-blown mutiny. Top 15 names like Arnold Allen, Movsar Evloev, Dan Ige, and Bryce Mitchell have drawn a line in the sand against the biggest MMA organization in the world. But this movement isn't just about the featherweights. It could reshape the entire UFC structure. If the promotion loses control of even one division, especially one as talent-rich as featherweight, it could open the door to something Dana White has long feared: organized fighter resistance. For over 2 decades, the UFC has maintained control by keeping fighters divided, discouraging unions, and dismantling cliques before they could gain momentum. But this time, the dam has broken. Fighters are talking to each other, comparing pay, sharing stories, and realizing a hard truth. They've been misled for years. Behind the glitz of the octagon and the roar of the crowd, many UFC fighters are struggling just to survive. We're not talking about missing out on luxury cars or private jets. We're talking about fighters living inside their gyms because they can't afford rent. UFC legend and former featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski has never been one to shy away from the truth, and his latest comments are sparking a heated discussion across the MMA world. Joined by former flyweight king Demetrius "Mighty Mouse" Johnson, the two veterans are pulling back the curtain on what fighting in the world's premier organization is really like when it comes to money. We fight for money. Let's be real about it, Volkanovski said in a recent interview. People love to talk about passion, legacy, and pride. And yeah, that's part of it. But at the end of the day, this is our job. We're risking everything every time we step into that cage, and we deserve to be compensated for it. Demetrius Johnson, widely considered one of the greatest fighters of all time, echoed those sentiments. "You can love fighting all you want," Johnson said, "but love doesn't pay the bills." Fighters have families, mortgages, and futures to think about. When you look at the numbers, a lot of guys just aren't getting what they're worth. Their comments come amid growing frustration from athletes across multiple divisions, with many calling out the UFC for what they see as an unfair share of revenue. Both Volkanovski and Johnson, who fought at the highest level and experienced the business side of the sport, say it's time for more transparency and fairness. Volkanovski added, "We're entertainers, athletes, and professionals. People tune in because of us. We're not asking for the world. We're asking to be treated fairly for what we bring to the table." As the conversation around fighter pay intensifies, the words of two respected champions carry serious weight. Their honesty highlights what many fighters have been feeling for years. Passion may drive the fight, but money keeps the career alive.
Guys who are doing the absolute worst are not in a position that they could say publicly, "I have a second job, I'm borrowing money from my parents."
Right.
I know so many fighters that are living in the Jackson MMA gym because they can't afford to have their own apartment. And they're UFC fighters.
And I'm going to be real again. A lot of people don't ever want to talk about this. People are going to be, "Oh, he's fighting for money." It's like, I always was fighting for money, looking after my family. It's that.
Well, I think a lot of people take the misconception that we fight because we want to fight. All of us athletes, even when I fought, it was for the money. We all need money. So that's why I fought. You know, when they're trying to have me fight somebody, I was like, "You gonna pay me this?" And they're like, "Yeah, I'll pay you that." It's like, send the contract, I'll fight him, right? Because I want to make sure after I'm done fighting, I can live comfortable. You're still healthy enough. You're the champ now. So the money is going to even be better. Why not keep on pushing it? When you do retire, you're good to go. You're 37. You're probably going to live to you like 85, maybe 90 years old. That's a long time.
But a lot of people do like, "I fight for the money." It's not as if I'm just not going to care and go out there. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
you would know. It's like, I don't know how to half-ass anything. Like I can't. Like I am going to go 100%. I'm going to give it my all, especially if it's for my family and money or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it 100%.
That was John Jones, arguably the greatest fighter in UFC history, pulling back the curtain on the financial nightmare playing out behind the scenes. And when the UFC's latest salary restructuring email landed in the inboxes of featherweight fighters, it hit harder than anyone expected. This wasn't about fighters demanding bigger paydays or chasing an extra zero on their checks. This was about athletes having their contracted purses slashed, mid-deal, with little explanation other than a vague, new business direction. For fighters already balancing the razor's edge between passion and survival, it was a gut punch. Let's talk numbers. In 2023, the UFC generated a staggering $1.14 billion in total revenue, a record year for the promotion. Yet, despite those sky-high profits, reports show that only about 16% of that money actually went to the fighters. That number is shockingly low compared to other major sports leagues, where athletes typically receive 48 to 50% of league revenue, such as in the NBA, NFL, and NHL. This isn't just a question of economics, it's a matter of principle. While the UFC continues to expand its global reach, rake in sponsorship deals, and break pay-per-view records, many of the athletes responsible for those successes are struggling to pay rent or medical bills. As critics and analysts have pointed out, the issue isn't that the UFC can't afford to pay its fighters more, it's that it chooses not to. At roughly 15% of total revenue going to the roster, the numbers paint a clear picture. The gap between the UFC's profits and its fighters' pay has never been wider. That was Jake Paul. And whether you like him or not, he's not wrong. The UFC continues to hoard massive profits while reportedly slashing fighter salaries even further. One anonymous featherweight told MMA Fighting that after signing a 4-fight deal last year, the promotion suddenly invoked a renegotiation clause, claiming he no longer qualified for his original purse due to internal ranking metrics. In reality, those so-called metrics are reportedly based on secret algorithms that factor in things like social media activity, finishing rates, and fighter momentum. The UFC doesn't call it a pay cut. They tell fighters they're simply worth less. It's a frustrating situation for many athletes, especially ranked contenders who've fought injured or stepped in on short notice. For them, it's not just business, it's betrayal.
UFC pays its fighters 15% of the revenue, whereas in the NFL it's 50-50, in the NBA it's 50-50. So they're basically hoarding extra 35% themselves.
That's all for today, fight fans. If you enjoyed the breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more UFC updates. This is Octagon HQ, your home for everything inside the fight game.